Welcome to Republican Roundtable. I'm your host, Max Reimer. As election season heats up, we often hear about all sorts of issues, specifically women's issues. Last week, you heard from Congressman Jason Lewis in the 2nd Congressional District. This week, we have on as a campaign messaging project of Jason Lewis some women who are going to blow the left-leaning stereotype out of the water. That organization is the Independent Women for an Independent Voice. And one of the founding members of this independent messaging project is Rita Hillman Olson. Rita, if you could, tell us a little bit about this movement and what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Well, as a woman, and being a Republican, being conservative, I mean, just like most people, we hear what the media says, we hear what campaigns say, and they always say, women's issues, women's issues. And I sit there and I go, well, what's a woman's issue? So they would say it, and it's usually, I remember one time I listened to a Democratic strategist who said a woman's issue was abortion, paid medical leave, and minimum wage. And I sat there and I went, no, it's not. I'm a woman. That's not my issue. So I work with Congressman Jason Lewis, and his staff is led by incredibly strong women. He's got women in D.C. that help, with the policy side of things, and his campaign manager is a woman. Republican women need a way to help people understand those three topics that this Democratic strategist mentioned. Those aren't our issues. Just because we have common body parts does not mean we all think the same. It's a terrible thing to say about women. And so the outcome is what we're going to basically discuss is that project and how it came about. And so that I appreciate that Congressman Lewis has given us this voice.
And I'd like to go down the line and introduce each one of you, because each of you have a distinctive issue that you tend to be an expert on, and it's not what we traditionally think of, to your point, the left-leaning women's issues. Vicki, I want to start with you. If you could, just give us a little background on who you are and specifically why you're involved in this project.
I'm Vicki Froelich. My husband and I live near Kenyon, where we farm. We raised 5 children that we homeschooled all the way through, except our 2 youngest did do 2 years of post-secondary, otherwise we did it all. And we have 8 grandchildren. I really appreciate Jason Lewis and his conservative stance, and education is very important to me because I homeschooled. So the sharing of the pushing of the gay agenda in our schools is very troubling to me. And also I am very concerned about the abortion issue also, and other issues too. I'm a woman, but I don't think that I have to have a woman representing me. I go more for what they stand for, what they're going to accomplish, and I'm very happy to represent Jason Lewis.
Mary Frutiger, what led you to this specific campaign?
I'm proud to say what led me here was the fact that Jason Lewis, years ago from talk radio time on, has stayed true to the basic issues that he's always spoken to. Taxation issues, quality of life for Minnesota citizens, with a fair wage and labor status. Jason has really stayed true and not spent an inordinate amount of time seeking only the social issues. Mm-hmm. Those were not the issues as a woman that I was interested in. I am a career working businesswoman. All my life I've looked at supporting not only my household and my home, but starting businesses and taking care of the needs of 400 to 500 employees at any given time. Those are the issues that I, as a woman, am primarily concerned with, taking care of family and making sure that my employees could take care of their family and enjoy the income that they so well earned. And that's really what attracted me to Jason, was giving people the opportunity to earn, make a good living, and keep the money they earned.
Nora Bryson Felton, the last member of our panel today, what led you to this specific campaign? And if you could, give us a little bit of background on the issues that you care about.
What led me to this campaign was years ago listening to the radio. Jason was obviously a constitutionalist. He knows the Constitution inside and out. He understands property rights, which is huge for people in agriculture. He understood about a living wage. He understood about being fair to your employees. He understood just in general the idea of right from wrong, and he would be willing to say those things. He didn't mince words, and I know people didn't necessarily like that, but out in the farm, we like to hear things the way they are. We don't like having people spend a lot of time beating around the bush. Yeah. My issues obviously are agriculture. I live on a farm, I grew up on a farm, and currently we're trying to make sure that our farm will be viable for the next generation, regardless of all of the regulations that they try to put into place. And then also being able to afford health care, and not afford the insurance, but how about actually being able to have insurance that does something? The idea that the premiums are so high that all I have is a policy, by the time I pay the deductible, I don't have any, I can't afford to go into the doctor anyway. So those type of issues are very, very important to me and my family out in the farm.
It's not, with each one of you, it's not the typical media-driven narrative about what women care about. I'm fascinated. We're watching these Kavanaugh hearings play out, and you're seeing a good man's character be assassinated live on screen. It's very interesting to watch. It all boils down to this issue of abortion, that it's a woman's right to choose, it's a woman's body, and this is what you should all care about. I want to open it up to, frankly, all of you. Why is it that seems to be the main narrative amongst, this is what should be the number one issue for you all? I'm curious to get your opinions on why it's gotten to that place. And really, Vicki, you touched on it at first. I want to go to you. What is it about this issue of abortion that makes it this die on the hill, golden calf type issue for the left, but then what they say is women?
I really struggle with it because I don't understand how anyone can run on abusing a baby that has feelings. I mean, I don't understand how you can get in front of a microphone and say that that is what you so wholeheartedly support, is ripping that little body apart. And a few years ago, lost a baby, and I took my daughters to hear the heartbeat, and they couldn't detect it, and they kept getting another machine saying it must be the machine isn't working, and finally we had to all agree the baby had died. And it was very hard, and I chose to go through labor rather than having a D&C, and I didn't expect to see my baby because it had already died, but I did. And you can see my hands are not very big. The baby was about the size of my hand, but it was perfectly formed, a little boy. It was almost getting fingernails. And looking at that little body and thinking that I had, because it was dead, thought it might be just a blob of disintegrated cells. Seeing, no, it was perfect. And I just don't see, we don't have the right to do whatever else we want to do. If I'm angry with someone, I don't have the right to hurt them. We don't have rights to do whatever we want. And that little baby feels and has pain, and it's just so barbaric that now that we know, we can see the ultrasound, we can see that the babies can smile, they're sucking their thumbs. We know it's a living baby. We can't hide that. So I'm just amazed that people can be that thoughtless.
You know, Jason Lewis, we had him on a couple weeks ago, and one campaign tactic I've noticed when it comes to Jason is having, you all mentioned him on the radio, having sound bites and having him taken out of context and that type of thing. Specifically, right, Jason Lewis's rhetoric is anti-woman. You hear that in ads. You know, Nora, you spoke passionately about listening to this guy on the radio. Why is that not reality for you? Why doesn't he offend you?
I listened to the whole conversation. Matter of fact, almost all of the sound bites that they try to use, I can distinctly remember the entire conversation. So the way that they try to twist it like they do everything else in the media, it just absolutely astounds me how they could possibly come to that conclusion. He was trying to, make examples. And Jason has such a great sense of humor too. His satire is amazing. Satire is the highest form of humor for anybody that's even studied that in college, which oddly enough I did. He is so deep and he is so smart and he knows the Constitution. So when he says those things, he's trying to draw people into the conversation. He's trying to get them to think on their own so that they don't just take these talking points and these sound bites so that they go, oh, wait a second, hold it. Maybe he has a point there. And he does a very good job of that. But if you try, even things that I say, if you want to take them out of context, I'm sure there's plenty of people that have. Mm-hmm. And then you can feel hurt, you can be the victim, you can play all that. And I know the other day when they called me for one of the polls that now they do, they asked me if I was in favor of or supported the women's movement. And I said, absolutely not. I do not support the women's movement because the women's movement have never been about me. The women's movement was always about having special privileges. If you want to be a female, you get your butt out there and you work. You do the work right next to the guys and you prove that you can do the work. Don't expect somebody to make excuses for you. You get out and do it. If you can do a quality job, you will get the bonus, you'll get the extra pay, you'll get whatever you need. But don't sit around and cry and crab to everybody else and then tell me that I'm supposed to support you. I will not do that. I have lived on the farm my entire life. I grew up in the hog barns at State Fair and other fairs. We had purebred livestock. You cannot tell me that I don't know what it's like to occasionally have to put up with somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about and thinks that they're going to put me down. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Then you just have to stand up and prove to them you do know what you're talking about.
To that point, and I find it fascinating, a lot of the rhetoric these days, especially with the Supreme Court hearings, the circus that's going on right now, you hear a lot about how women are victims all the time. It's the natural posture. Mary, you'd brought up specifically about how kind of these economic issues are women's issues. I'm curious as to why you don't take that posture as a woman. Why aren't you the victim?
I spent some of my formative years in the inner city, broken home, raised by a great dad that really took care to see that his daughters did get out, worked, also went to school, no job if you were failing school. But he taught us well and he taught us disciplines, but he also taught us we could not be selfish. We had to earn whatever it is that we wanted in our life. It's the same with the abortion issue when I look at this. I look at it as you made your choice. It is a woman's choice. Whether to have a baby, whether to get pregnant, in most cases it is the choice. Mm-hmm. Now you've made that choice. Now that new baby girl, baby boy, has the right to life. And that's where I really believe the choice stops. Now that has to be taken care of for the child. Why do I believe that way? I believe that most of the packaging around the women's issues has been done under a very selfish delivery mode. You deserve, you deserve, you deserve. No, you work, whether it's to be a homemaker, or in my case, I have no children. I'm a working woman, but I have the proud joy of taking care of 430 families, not just the women who work for me or the men who work for me, but for the families. And that's an obligation that I'm proud of. But again, those are choices. And I really, really believe at this point that the left plays to making the woman the victim. She's a victim because she doesn't get the best job or the best promotion, or she is burdened with a child. Really, it's all about choice. Women in this country, in our time, have all the choices that a man has if they want to work for it versus just demand it.
Rita, why this movement? Why a time such as this did you kind of feel it was appropriate to spearhead something like this?
One of the hesitancies of women, conservative women, is the left's identity politics. We don't believe in identity politics. We don't believe because we have similar body parts, because our skin tones are the same, that we're supposed to vote a certain way. It's really insulting to say, well, because of our body makeup, I'm supposed to think the same as Vicki or anybody else on this panel. I respect all the women I deal with, but I have my own thoughts. I have my own goals. And so it was really a struggle to go, okay, how do we identify women and go, here's a woman's issue without getting caught in that identity politics route. And so, we thought about it, we worked together, had discussions. I, talked to the women on this panel and the other women that are in this project, and all of a sudden it just all came together. Because they identified all their interests, just like you heard right now, and they identified it, and we said, you know what? A woman's issue is unique to every woman. Mm-hmm. It's not because of our physical or bodily makeup, it's what's up here. Mm-hmm. And our own experiences is what drives us to vote, and our issues. So we hit on it, we go, that's it. We don't have to do identity politics. We can say what we believe, and this really has been a wonderful outlet to do that, and we're really excited about the upcoming videos that are coming out.
Yeah, and the videos I have been very impressed with up to this point, and we'll link out to the website I think a little bit later on where people can actually go and watch those videos for each of your issues and each kind of independent voice you represent. I want to open it up. Why is it that we play these identity politics games? You have Jason Lewis on one side, who is the congressman currently. He's running for re-election. You have Angie Craig on the other side, who is a woman, who's also trying for the second time to win this seat. Why is it that Jason represents your values, and I say your as in your individual values, better than someone like Angie Craig? Who wants to take that one?
I'd like to start that one.
All right,
I'm smiling as you're asking. When I was younger, Jason Lewis represented taxes, my income, the reduction of taxes on my property, my school, my home, etc. When I was working, I watched that and I saw my taxes continually going up. Every time I got a raise, I lost half of it. So Jason was a fighter then. That's fast forward to another 10, 15 years. He still is true to reducing spending as the way to really stimulate an economy and not just raise taxes. Now we fast forward to last year. I became a senior citizen. I am now, yes, a senior.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's a good benchmark.
You know what? It's an exciting time. You're absolutely right. As a senior woman, still working, I got my first Social Security check. I was ecstatic until I realized I was taxed on it. And out of 38 states who don't tax it, 11 do. And I tuned into Jason again, and where's he at? Jason is working night and day to eliminate, reduce, and to get taxation off of the backs of senior citizens who paid all their lives. So Jason has been working for women on the same issues and the same topics with consistency for generations. That's why I believe in Jason Lewis. Mm-hmm.
And I would like to piggyback on that, because one of the other things was the estate tax, okay? And I know that not very many people saw the movie Secretariat, but they should, to really understand what we're talking about here. The idea that after we have already paid taxes on everything for years and years and years, that if my husband dies tomorrow, that almost half of what we have has to go to the state and federal governments. Mm-hmm. There is no way that a small business can afford to try to restart every generation. I mean, I know that there were women on TV that said, well, I don't think anybody needs to make more than $250,000. Well, that woman obviously has not gone out and had to price a combine lately, okay? A combine is $300,000, and that's if you buy it used. So you have to be able to have that after years and years and years of work, you have to be able to pass that business on to the next generation. If you have to start from the ground level every single time, they will not make it. The businesses, there's too much overhead, there's too many costs. So he has been fighting for that, and just his whole outlook on the fact, I loved a couple of the segments that he gave about the idea that property taxes really are a disincentive. It's a property rights issue. Every time you pay a tax, it's property that you have worked for that you have to give to the government. That's property rights, like anything else. And the way the whole system is set up now, there's a lot of people that go, well, why should I work so hard? I can make what was the last thing? $30,000 just by being on public assistance? What kind of incentive is that for somebody to do their best, to use their God-given talents? I mean, I think that's one of the things that the Kavanaugh hearing showed us too, is for some reason the left has this grudge against people who want to be high achievers. I don't know if they're jealous of them or what the deal is, but they don't want you to have any chutzpah. They don't want you to go out there and go for the gold brass ring and achieve. They somehow want you to sit here and grovel and beg, and we just weren't made that way.
I remember seeing a commercial that disturbed me greatly, and it was for Minsure at the time, and the commercial was, if you're a household making under $90,000 and you have a kid, you qualify, as if it was this great thing that you should be pursuing. Vicki, I'm interested, based on that question, Angie Craig being a woman, Jason Lewis being a man, why does one represent you better than the other one?
Well, I've heard both of them in person several times, Jason more, of course, but he is just always like a fire hose of information and numbers and solutions, and he just has a lot of good ideas. And I've heard Angie Craig in person too, and what I have heard her say is, I am really mad. I am really mad. And I'm a fighter, and I'm going to beat Jason Lewis. And that's the extent of what I've heard her say. And I saw her at the State Fair, and I asked her what she thought about Keith Ellison, and she just spun around and wouldn't answer my question. But I think that is, people are seeing that this is really irritating, that the women on the Senate committee are so concerned about Kavanaugh, and yet our women here in Minnesota have a documented case against Keith Ellison that it really doesn't matter. If you're a Democrat, it really doesn't matter. And they don't believe the women in that case. And I find that really frustrating.
Yep. The most recent investigative update was that they need corroborating evidence. I think we've been calling for that in a certain case against someone else, which it is very disturbing. One of the big issues specifically here in Minnesota, and we all tend to be a part of it, I mentioned Minsure before, is health care. Democrats seem to be running on this idea that they wrecked this thing and now they are the ones to fix it. Rita, I want to hit on this because Jason is being hit on it pretty hard, that he's going to eliminate pre-existing conditions and he's the big boogeyman. Why is that? Is that the case? Isn't it the case? I'm curious to get your take on it, because it seems to be a staple issue here in Minnesota that Jason is getting hit on pretty hard.
Well, Jason, of course, his goal is to want to have premiums get back in line, something that's affordable. Right now, we don't have affordable insurance, and then, of course, the deductibles are so high that, and I think we've already discussed this on the panel. Jason is a firm believer in free market policies. Jason also believes that, there are times people do need help. I mean, I think sometimes people think that Republicans just no government, no, that's not what we want. We want an accountable government. We want a government that's responsible. And that's what Jason is working really, really hard for, is a government that is accountable to the people, and also letting them have these choices, these healthcare choices. We know that the healthcare bill, went down in the Senate. Jason was really supportive of that, and he really felt it was a good solution to be able to buy across the state lines, and felt strongly that it was the ideas that would lower the health insurance premiums and give us choices. Let us go to our doctors. And so you're right, we say let's try free market, and they say, well, that's not going to work, but we've never actually tried it.
Right.
We've never actually tried it. And as I was saying, is there's no way that we just want people to, that have the pre-existing conditions to be heard. I mean, that's not what we want, but we have to be, how should I say, we have to be, or understand the economics of it, how pre-existing conditions are worked into it, and Jason does.
Well, if I could chime in here, I was on MNCHA. I was on the state high-risk pool. It was a great program. It took care of everybody that had the pre-existing and was in the pool. I had a policy that had a $400 deductible. It cost me $1,200 every 3 months. I can't touch that now. I have 2 children.
That sounds pretty
who
good.
Are under and now if I wanted, and then, first of all, they got rid of that. Then I went to Blue Cross Blue Shield under Obamacare. They changed it 3 different years, and then Blue Cross Blue Shield dropped me like a rock. And it was me and my 2 kids. And it was up to $12,000 or something a year, and my deductible was $10,000. I mean, so why? And that was before they even talked about going across state lines. And look how well it worked. I would give anything to go back, to go into that pool again and have the same kind of coverage I had before.
Rita, with the last 30 seconds that we have here, how can people find out a little bit more about this specific movement and get involved with you all?
We have a dedicated, or I should say Congressman Lewis has a dedicated web page on his campaign site, or his website, I should say, jasonformn.com. And if you go and look at the options for independent women, for an independent voice, that's where you will see the stories of the women. We have the 3 women here, but there's more women involved in the project with the various other issues. And so that's the best place, is just to go to that web page on his website, and then of course follow him on the Facebook and Twitter, and he's on YouTube. These videos will all be seen, and so forth. And our intent is we're going to be releasing at least 1 a week, and at some point we probably will be releasing a couple each week.
Very good. Rita, Vicki, Mary, Nora, thank you all for joining the Republican Roundtable today.
Thank
Our
you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
This has been the Republican Roundtable. As you've heard today, women's issues aren't always what you hear in the mainstream media. Until next week, I'm Max Reimer.